background.
Amazing.
I,
And
oh, I do want to do one quick thing. Just 1 second, Simon.
go for it. Go for it.
I have a short anecdote about this, which
Oh,
is your,
go on. Excellent. Good.
which is
Good,
which
good,
is your
good.
book. Uh,
Yes.
I think yes, we're live. We're good to go.
Fab. Excellent. You've got the first edition. That's the second edition. Look, it's changed.
Yes, apparently.
A,
Okay,
a
I can't.
reincarnation. Yeah, there
Of
you
the
go.
same thing, yeah. Okay. Maybe I'll change the background. Hey everyone, welcome to this new live of from Humanly Brands. My name is Karan Malhotra. We do this kind of conversation once or twice a month where we bring on thought leaders in different areas of expertise across the world to help leaders such as yourselves um, make more informed decisions around your communication. Some of it might be strategic, some of it might be tactical. Today, of course, I'm very grateful to have with me here Simon Lancaster. Hey, Simon, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on, Carden. It's a nice way to spend some time.
Yes, and we were just saying that it's the end of Simon's day, and hopefully we will have a nice, chill conversation. I'm just going to, I think, yes, that's good. I've got rid of my background because I wanted to say I actually have what I believe is the first edition of Simon's book, and I think Simon was just holding up a minute ago the latest one.
Yep.
So
Rewritten, actually. The first three chapters are all new in this version. So, yeah, you need to buy both versions of this one, basically.
to compare it. And the quick thing there, Simon, I actually got to know of Simon through Simone Heng, who I believe did a workshop with Simon a couple of years ago. And I remember she wrote about the amazing experience that she had in the workshop with Simon. And I love listening to books on Audible. And Simon has this book and another one as well on Audible. So I listened to the book about 3 years ago, and it was always top of mind for me. And then I listened to it, and I think I listened to so many books, I just completely forgot that I had. And then I said, "Oh, I haven't read this book. Let me go and buy the physical copy." And then when I went back to Audible, I said, "Oh, I've already listened to it," so I listened to it again. So that's a quick note about
Well,
that.
Khan, you know about the rule of three, right? This is very important. You always have to do things in threes. And so you've had the audio version, you've had the first edition. Now, if you get this edition as well, you've hit the rule of three, and you know the Latin saying omni trium perfectum.
Of
Everything's
course,
in
perfection in
three. So
threes.
there you go. Yeah.
Fantastic. So, ladies and gents, so why don't we? I'll start with a formal introduction to Simon. Um, for the people who I think it's a very small number who might not know about Simon, but Simon is one of the world's top speechwriters. He first became a speechwriter in the late 1990s, working for members of Tony Blair's cabinet, and has since gone on to write speeches for CEOs of some of the biggest companies in the world, including Unilever, HSBC, and Intercontinental Hotels Group. He's the author of four best-selling books on communication, including the award-winning Winning Minds: Secrets from the Language of Leadership. There are four of them. I have one of them, and I believe Simon is working on his next book, which should be out in due course. He's an executive fellow of Henley Business School, a guest lecturer on creative writing at Cambridge University, and a three times TEDx talker. His TEDx, he's had three TEDx speeches. His Speak Like a Leader TEDx talk has been watched more than 5 million times, and he often appears on the BBC, Sky, and LBC. He's been repeatedly voted one of the top global gurus on communication. Welcome again, Simon.
It's great to be with you, Khan. And not all of those 5 million views were me going click on you. Not all of them, not all of them. A few might have been, but not all 5
A
million.
few of them, but or majority of them are true. So, Simon, we actually a number of welcome again, Neha, to the call. Anyone who's joining the Zoom link, please feel free to turn on your video. This is an open conversation that we're having at the end of our day. So if you want to just turn on your video, interject, ask Simon a question, please feel free to join the conversation. And Simon, we actually had a number of different, hi Neha, we had a number of different questions that came in from some of the people who signed up for the workshop as for this conversation today. And I just want to quickly reference, as there was all this talk about the memorandum of understanding, and Trump gave this big speech yesterday. I'm not asking about the speech specifically, but he uses this thing of, he will read sometimes, he'll break into improvisation, he'll do his own thing. And Ivana actually was asking about the pros and cons of approaching a speech that is well prepared improvisation versus memorizing versus intelligently reading. So, if you had some thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, Trump's very interesting, particularly on that point about the difference between how much of his stuff is prepared and how much of it is apparently improvised. And I emphasize it's the apparently improvised because, having watched him and studied quite a few of his speeches, and I didn't see the one yesterday, forgive me. I know that peace in the Middle East is quite important, but equally, England were playing Croatia in the World Cup yesterday, and that's also more important. So hence, I might have
Priorities,
fallen
priorities.
behind a little bit on my speechwriter commentary duties there. But having analysed quite a few of Trump's speeches, he seems to me to be more like a stand-up comic, where he has little bits, little routines, little 2-minute things that he'll just kind of piece together like a stand-up comic will. So, for instance, like if you see Jimmy Carr apparently, is just coming up with these jokes on the
On the
spot.
fly.
And he looks so amazing and he looks like he's improvising it, but he's rehearsed these gags beforehand, but he just has up his sleeve like hundreds, if not thousands, of fantastic one-liners. And I think Trump is actually the same. So, like so much in public speaking and in rhetoric, it's more the illusion of improvisation than actual improvisation. But there's one instance, because you're talking about the Middle East situation and about Trump in particular. There's one situation where he certainly would have said something that I'm sure the State Department in the States wouldn't have been too happy with. And this was, I think, crikey, when was it? Maybe about September last
Okay.
year, when he was going off to a NATO summit and he was out on the White House lawn, and Netanyahu, Israel, had just started bombing Iran, and everyone was like, "What the hell are they doing? What the hell are
Yeah.
they doing?"
Yeah.
And Trump was asked his views on it, and you could see he was furious. He was incandescent. And with Netanyahu, he felt Netanyahu had crossed a line. And a journalist asked him about it. In his response, he said, I paraphrase here, but he said, the trouble is with Israel and Iran, you've got two countries that have been fighting each other for so long that they don't know what the F they're doing. And he swore.
And he
They
swore.
don't know what the F they're doing. And now my understanding is that when he said that, literally, Israel had jets in the air flying over to do the latest bombing campaign against Iran. And Netanyahu, when this got to him that Trump had actually sworn about him in that fashion, the planes were turned around, you know?
Wow.
So, because obviously, if you use such extreme language, you're showing, hang on a sec, you have acted in an extreme way now. So, I'm taking the extreme step of using extreme language. So, in that sense, it may well have been quite a good and effective strategic swear. And in terms of diplomacy, global diplomacy, obviously, there you want to achieve particular outcomes. That's what any diplomat wants to do. And whilst we might say, oh, well, swearing is very bad and people should never swear, I mean, if it's stopping a war or if it's stopping people being bombed, then maybe it's a
It's not a bad
noble
thing.
swear. Although, as we now know, of course, it was only a temporary alleviation, and then the war against Iran was just postponed until February, effectively, or whenever
Yeah,
it was.
and hopefully it remains postponed indefinitely. You never know what. I mean, this is the MOU yesterday was just the start of 60 days when they're going to iron out a lot of many more details. So let's see how that pans out.
Yeah.
But actually, on that, some because you brought that particular anecdote up, and just before we started, I know that you mentioned that you had a really nice workshop that you did today with a bunch of corporate leaders. So let's say you're in a room over there, and someone asks you, "Hey, you know what? I noticed Trump did this particular thing last year where he used the F bomb.
Mm,
It comes naturally to me, but I find myself holding myself back because I have to play this corporate role. I have to come across as a certain way as a leader.
mm,
Is there room to use, what is not basically to cuss in a certain environment? How
mm.
would you use that in a way that can actually work to your advantage without maybe pissing people off?
Well, I mean, Khan, you just swore, pissing people off. And that illustrates the point perfectly. That sometimes, so thank you. You just walked straight into my trap there.
Yeah.
That was brilliant. And no doubt to people listening now, they're going to think, oh, Khan just swore, and that means therefore that he's being authentic. He's being
Mm,
honest. He's not
mm,
putting on some corporate front. He's not putting on a face. He's not masking. You're looking authentic. You're looking spontaneous. You're looking like you're in the moment. And so you see, in that respect, your swear there was a very good and effective swear. And
mm,
in fact, when you go to a lot of corporate events, the odd swear will be dropped in, and as long as it is done appropriately, it can be very successful. If the CEO comes out and he says, do you know what, folks, last year you fucking smashed it, you
mm,
know,
mm.
then people are going to be like, oh man, he really means that. And he's using extreme language to show that I did something extremely brilliant last year. And so they're gonna quite like it. Of course, if he comes out and says you're all fucking shit, then they might have there might be a
You can tell.
tribunal or a case on their hands. So the key question is, when is it going to work?
Hmm.
When is that kind of language going to be appropriate? Which takes us right back to that ancient art of rhetoric. That is what rhetoric is: determining what is the best language to use in any particular moment. And there, the magical formula for, I'm sure, many people that are tuned in now won't necessarily have studied ancient Greek rhetoric, but I mean, you look back at what the ancient Greeks used to say, it's like a treasure chest in terms of really understanding what works in speech. And they talked about three elements to a good speech. You needed ethos, which is the credibility of the speaker; logos, which is the logic of the argument; and pathos, which is the emotions of the audience. And if you want to think about whether a swear is appropriate, test it along those lines. Does the speaker have the ethos to swear? Do they
Hmm.
have the credibility to swear? If your child swears at you, they don't have the ethos. You're going to tell them off, you know?
Hmm.
Whereas if your parent swore at you, you might be like, oh man, I need to go with that. So you see, ethos matters. No one minds when Bob Geldof swears. You
Hmm.
know, he's
Hmm.
in fact that's part of his ethos. The fact that he
Hmm.
does swear, that he's honest, he's passionate, it sends all these signals about him. Likewise, pathos, you've got to match the emotion of the people that you're speaking to. It's got to fit their emotion. And so, for instance, if someone says, as some, sometimes people come to you with bad news, and they're like, they say, oh my God, my husband's left me. And you're like, oh, fuck, really?
Hmm.
There you're showing you. So I'm sorry, Khan. I did this the first time I've done a LinkedIn live, and I've dropped the F bomb like about five times, and we're not even
we're,
15
we're,
minutes in, but it was
it's
your
completely
question, to be
okay.
fair.
Yes,
and
yes,
and I'm
100%.
using it in a demonstrative way as well. So hopefully
Yes,
this is not gratuitous. Because
yes.
if it was gratuitous, then it wouldn't match the emotion of the moment. So it wouldn't match the pathos. And then, like, logos, sometimes swearing can be the effective way to get your argument across. So
Hmm.
if you've just had your annual accounts through, and you're like made a 2 million loss last year, then saying to your co-directors, this is fucking awful, might
Hmm.
actually, rather than couching it, obfuscating, using like just jargon or whatever,
Hmm. Hmm.
that you're being honest.
Yeah.
So this is the thing, you know, always you've got to judge, is it effective? Is it going to work? Is it appropriate? And the way you do that is test it against those three things: ethos, pathos, logos. that's the formula.
And that's a really nice, simple way to remember it. And I just want to go back to, again, the example that you gave about Trump last year, right?
Mm.
Is it fair to say that you think he's a showman, right? We know some will
Yeah.
call him a showman, some will call him a charlatan, you know. But and he's been in real estate, he was on The Apprentice, you know, and he did one term, went away, now he's back for another term.
Mm.
Um, why does he keep winning elections? Why do you think people still want him back? What is it about his ethos, logos, pathos that appeals to a
Mm.
certain kind of audience?
He's a brilliant communicator. You
Mm,
know, I think he understands the psychology of people, as many good business people do, very well. And he knows how to play people's psychology. And I think his background in entertainment, and he
mm,
does have a long history in the entertainment industry, all his, you know, hosting boxing matches in his hotels in the 80s, appearing in movies. And of course, when he was doing The Apprentice, you know, there's nothing like doing live TV for really training someone in how to connect with a mass audience. And I
mhm,
think it's probably no coincidence that arguably three of the most significant politicians on the planet in the last few years made their name in the world of TV entertainment, because it's not just Donald Trump. Here in the UK, the most consequential prime minister we've had in recent years was Boris Johnson. You know,
mm.
he, in taking the UK out of the European Union, he was only prime minister for a short time, but boy, did he make something happen in that short time. You know, taking the UK out of the EU was the biggest thing that has been done domestically and internationally in Britain for a long time, with consequences that will last for many, many, many years. And of course, he wouldn't have got anywhere were it not for his own early appearances in TV comedy. You know,
I mean,
he
it's the
he
same for Zelensky as well, right?
he was number three. He was the third one that I was going to say about Servant of the People. He made this own TV program that was supposed to be a joke, where he
Mm,
was cursing in that as well. I mean, there was a famous speech he gave in there where he was railing against the elites in Ukrainian, of course, but he was saying, "F the motorcades, F the elites, F their beach houses and all of this." And then all of a sudden fiction turned to fact, and he actually became president. So I think this is the thing. Trump is often underestimated. All of us, we live in our little social media bubbles, and
mhm.
if you're predisposed against Trump, no doubt your algorithm will show you little clips of him being an idiot and him stumbling over his words, as he does. But I mean, my big insight into Trump's rhetoric and the effectiveness of his rhetoric came actually in, I think it was about September 2024. So during the US presidential election, the Lawyer magazine, a great magazine here in the UK, asked me to give a speech to some top lawyers about the rhetoric of the US presidential campaign. They asked me to do a comparative analysis, Kamala Harris versus Donald Trump.
Mhm.
And at the time, everyone that was saying Kamala Harris was going to win, the bookmakers, the betting shops here in the UK had Kamala Harris as far and away the favourite to win. And all the commentators, all of the podcasts, all of the main media news outlets were saying that Kamala was going to win, and that Trump was washed up, that he showed signs of dementia. You know, he kept forgetting his words. People were walking out of his rallies halfway through. That was the narrative that I was hearing for months and months and months. And anyway, in preparation for this speech to the Lawyer magazine, I thought, oh my God, I'm going to actually have to sit down and watch a full Trump speech and then a full Harris speech. And I challenge anyone listening to this to watch Donald Trump's speech to the Republican National Convention in 2024. I challenge you to watch that speech, to read that speech, analyze that speech, and tell me that is not a great speech. You know,
Mm.
because I watched it and compared it with Kamala Harris's speech to the Democratic National Convention the same year. So both of them, there was completely comparable speeches. Kamala Harris is giggling, you know, like she's, you know, literally like she's drunk or like she's high, and
Mm.
repeating herself.
Mm. Mm.
And she only spoke for about 40 minutes. And you were just like, what was that? It was word salad. I mean, watch it. I'm not, I wanted her to be good. And Trump, on the other hand, oh my God, his speech is so powerful. It is like Shakespearean in its quality. It's very similar. In fact, I did a little social media video pointing out 10 similarities between Trump's RNC speech and Mark Antony's speech in Julius Caesar, which
Wow.
is famously regarded as being one of the textbook case studies in artful rhetoric. And whoever wrote Trump's speech, I don't know who did write it, but they had Mark Antony in mind when they were writing it. There's no doubt about it. In Mark Antony, there's the famous bit where he gets Caesar's blood-stained tunic, and it's like, it's crying over it and talking about it
Mm.
to the masses. And Trump did the same with, well, not actually holding up it, but this was a couple of weeks after the shooting incident when he was shot in the
Yeah.
air. And you remember there was a fireman was killed by the
Mm.
by the sniper, and he had the fireman's outfit up there on the stage with him. Anyway, as soon as I watched those two speeches back to back, I was like, I'm in no doubt Trump's going to win this. We're being fed. We're not being fed a fair analysis of what's really going on in this race here. And I said that to the Lawyer magazine. And I showed them videos demonstrating what I was talking about. And I asked at the end, like I asked at the beginning of the speech, who do you think is going to win? And everyone put their hand up for Harris. At the end of my speech, I said, who do you think is going to win now? Everyone put their hand up for Trump. And of
Mm.
course, the rest is
It's
history.
history. That's amazing. And actually, to build on that, Simon, given that you talked about analysis, could maybe if we could just take a step back, because a lot of the people that a lot of the work that I do is invariably with senior corporate leaders who are looking to either they've had, let's say, a career of 20, 25 years and are looking to in this difficult moment in the last say 2.5 3 years they have looked to move on or are looking to start a consulting business of their own, or
Mm.
sometimes it's a senior entrepreneur, right? And they're unsure about, okay, how do I approach great communication? So if you have a you know and a blueprint, I mean, how would you advise a senior leader to approach great communication? As what does great communication look like in a
Mm.
leadership context, and then as a step two, what is maybe the anatomy of a great speech?
Well, that's a really good question. I'm not going to bore you by talking about ethos, pathos, logos again, but that does kind of underpin anything. But let me instead give you like something possibly a little bit more practical, which is
Hmm.
one of the ways that I will work with my clients when I'm writing a speech for them. So to start off with, I want to find their moral purpose. Their
Mm.
moral purpose. So I will throw them a long list. I'll show them like a collection of moral words. So these will be words like, ambition, authenticity, audacity, courage, curiosity, creativity, hard work, humility, honesty, responsibility, resilience, respect. I'll show them a whole ton of words, literally like maybe 100 words. And then I'll say, I want you to pick which one of those words is most important to you.
Mm.
And then you work on in personal branding, don't you? This then becomes like part of their brand, that
Yeah.
one word. And you see that one word, I will then build for them a speech around that one word. And
Okay.
so, and the structure I will follow is this: my story, our story, what next? And I'll ask them through it. So they'll pick their word. What would your word be, Khan, out of the words that I just said to you? Creativity, curiosity, collaboration, compassion, kindness, hard work, honesty, humility, responsibility, resilience, respect, ambition, audacity, authenticity.
I'm called to curiosity right now.
Curiosity, cool. Okay, so curiosity will be your word, and we'll have a my story, our story, what next? Okay. So firstly, the my story. I want you, Khan, to think about your life, the whole of your life. So visualize your life as a timeline. Okay. So on the left-hand side, just checking, is that your left-hand side? That is your left-hand side, isn't it?
Mm.
Yeah. On your left-hand side, I want you to visualize yourself as a baby. So maybe you
Mm-hmm.
remember a picture of yourself, And then see yourself through the years. See yourself as a toddler taking your first steps, as a child, your first day at school, going in the playgrounds, your first teacher, your friends, growing up, becoming a teenager.
Mm-hmm.
Remember the ups and downs of the teen years, the
Mm-hmm.
firsts, the lasts, the happy memories, the bits you'd rather forget.
Mm.
Becoming an adult, starting work, first jobs, good jobs, bad jobs,
Mm.
relationships that went very well, relationships that really didn't go very well.
Mm.
And then the general ups and downs, right the way up until, you're the marvelous person that you are now. So you've got like the whole of your life in your mind's eye now. Now, my question to you, Khan, is this. Thinking back through the whole of your life, when was the first moment that you really came to understand about the importance of curiosity? When was the first moment something happened
Mm.
that made you discover, and it might have been something big or small, at home or at school with family or
Mm.
friends?
Mm.
It might have been a big life event or something small and inconsequential, but
Mm-hmm.
you learned a big truth. Have you got an event in mind, an incident in mind?
I do actually. It's actually it's I so my dad was from North India and my mom was from the South. And in the south of India, she came from a hilly region called Coorg, which is actually called the Scotland of the East, because there was a British colony over there, garrison, etc. My earliest memory from that time is sitting on the lap of my granduncle in his large um, estate kind of area, orange orchards in front, and he has this huge wicker basket of oranges, and he's feeding me the orange sitting in his lap. And I remember every time you peel any citrus, right, and you get that zest and that
Yeah.
smell. And I think that because of that, I've always had this love for anything orange, you know, whether it's orange chocolate or, anything else, right? And I think that sharp zestiness along with that core loving memory of something to do with home, and also in the space of wonder, right? It's huge, expansive green and oranges, and it's a little cold, and I'm sitting with someone I love very much. Um, I guess I was always maybe curious about more things like that are very layered and involve
Mm.
people and involve some sort of core loving memory.
That's gorgeous. What a beautiful story. And you see, Khan, I now know far more about you and I'm interested. You know what I mean? And you've activated all of my senses. I could see where you were describing the green, kind of like Scotland and down in the south. I was picturing, I've been to Kerala, had a lovely time in Kerala, and so you were connecting with me through that story. And of course, then what you do there when you're talking about the orange then gives you a great metaphor, doesn't it, for curiosity when you peel
Yes.
things back and you discover things and you taste something, you swallow. Of course, we often use the metaphor of food for ideas anyway. So there's your story. That's brilliant. Now let's move on. Now let's move on to the hour story. And my question there that I would ask my client would be, now give me three reasons why the world now needs curiosity more than ever. And so there you flip it on its head. You
Hmm.
flip it on its head and you kind of argue that there's an absence of curiosity in the big
Mm.
things that really matter. And you might talk about an absence of curiosity in politics now, that politicians just aren't thinking about big ideas, big ways of really reforming stuff in the way that politicians in the past. Where are the Churchills? Where are the Attleys? Where are the
Mm.
Thatchers? Where are the big thinkers coming forward with big reform? They're just not. You might say the same in business. That in business, things like the automotive industry, the car is still basically the car that was created way back 100 years ago. There have been the model is
Yeah.
still fundamentally, the
Yeah.
same. And of course, one of the reasons for this is because whenever there's a new upstart, the big companies will buy them, and
Yeah.
crush them. So we've got a lack of curiosity in business, and then we've got a lack of curiosity in society as well. People have just stopped asking questions because of
Yes.
cancel culture, and so you're building up the case. That's the hour story. Then I'd ask you, who's your favorite person from history? Might be a great business person or a great politician. Who's your you read any autobiographies or biographies of any great figures?
Yes.
He checks
Uh,
out his bookshelf.
he does actually. Uh, who I can think of. I mean, I wouldn't say favorite per se, but one that comes to mind right now is Lee Iacocca, the American automotive, giant personality, and what he did for Chrysler in bringing it back, and reinventing the idea of what big automotive meant, etc., bringing it back from the brink. But this idea of like this hero's journey and this hero's arc, right? That's one that comes to mind.
Absolutely fantastic. And that would then connect beautifully with the point that I made about the lack of curiosity
Mm.
actually in the automotive industry. So you've got someone that did come forward with some big solutions. And so you see, we've done the my story, we've done the our story, and then we move on to the what next. And that's when you bring it back to your business, to what you're actually doing now. So that's when you have the opportunity to pitch what it is that you're what it is that your business is doing, what it is that you're selling. And so
Mm.
there, my question to you would be to give me three ways in which your company is bringing more of your word curiosity to the world. How are you
Mm.
doing that?
Mm.
How are you doing that? And asking your clients the right questions, being curious about your clients, being curious about the world,
Yeah.
being curious about the impact of new technologies or something like that. And so there we go. And that, you see, we've just been talking for about 4 minutes there on that, 5 minutes or something like that. But I've hoovered up from you enough ideas there that I'd be able to put together for you a pretty decent like first outline. And obviously we'd do it more extensively if we were working
Sure.
together as a client. But like that would be my recommendation to any like the people that you were talking about, anyone who's
Yeah.
thinking about setting up their own consultancy, work that through. Pick your moral word, and then like stick to it and do a my story, our story, what next? Just answering those questions that I then went through. And it may be you have a few words up your sleeve. You pick a few of them, or just pick, what's your point? What's your message actually to people? And then, well, when was the first time you found out about that? Why does the world need it now? What's your business doing about it? And it's magical formula. It works so effectively.
And I mean, I think it works so effectively also because it's really simple to sort of understand and implement, and
Yeah,
then build a habit around, I would imagine, uh,
absolutely.
with that.
Yeah.
And just to build on what you were saying around the idea of stories, right? Um, I mean, I was narrating that story. I definitely got transported myself, and I was thinking back to one of my favorite books, which the reason I like it is because from the moment that from the first page to the last, it feels like it's just a collection of stories, which is how to win friends and influence people.
Mm,
Um, it's just story from end to end. And I think what he does fantastically over there is using metaphors, right, and using
mm,
um the craft of storytelling. So I know that that's something that you really emphasize a lot on. It's there as a key highlight in your Speak Like a Leader TEDx talk. Also, if anyone hasn't yet seen that, you should definitely give that a watch on TEDx. If not, Simon has written a number of books. Definitely check those out. But Simon, I mean, how do metaphors really work? And in the context of storytelling, how do they sort of influence trust and some sort of emotional connection? How do you sort of use that?
Yeah, metaphors are super, super powerful. It's quite unique as human beings that we do this thing like speak in metaphors, communicate in metaphors, because we're constantly seeing things as things which they are not. Do you know what I mean? And that's what the definition of a metaphor is. It's a substitution. You talk about something as something which it is not. So you might talk about planting ideas in someone's mind, and you're talking about ideas as if they're seeds. Therefore, it conjures up an image. So it's kind of poetry, but it's also super, super persuasive. So studies have shown how changing nothing more than the metaphor in a piece of text can lead people to profoundly different reactions to all sorts of questions,
Mm.
ranging from whether they'll invest in a company, whether they'll support policies, whether they'll accept a lockdown in case of like a coronavirus, a pandemic, whether they'll change their behavior in response to climate change. You just change the metaphor and you create a new image in people's minds. It's like metaphor is like hypnosis. You
Mm.
change the way that people feel about something very, very fundamentally in the way you do it. So
I,
think, yeah, go on.
So sorry, no, just to build on that, I remember like you mentioned it in your book Connect as well about, and you mentioned Boris Johnson a little earlier and Brexit,
Mm,
and how there were so many. He spent a lot of time using food metaphors as a
he did.
means for connection. So I mean, could you
Yeah.
talk about that?
I would love to. Yeah. I mean, obviously, Brexit is the biggest geopolitical decision that we have taken in the UK in
Hmm.
the last few years. And much of the debate was carried out through metaphor because we can't see the European Union. What is the European Union? It's a series of treaties. That's all it is, basically, like
Mm.
built over years and years and years. It's very complicated, it's abstract, and all of this. So, how do we make sense of that very complicated thing? Well, we just use a really simplistic metaphor. We say the European Union is something else. Now, the trouble is with that is that different people with different perspectives on the European Union use different metaphors. So
Hmm.
those people who love the EU, they talked about it using the metaphor of the EU is a family. Family. Oh, lovely. So we're safe, we're together, we're going to look out for one another. All of those connotations, associations, and emotions instantly activated when you speak within that metaphor. And that meant Brexit was a divorce.
Mm.
Wow. You say that word divorce instantly, boom. It activates all of these negative associations, powerful emotions, fear, and it suggests to you something you've got to do. We've got to talk. We've got to get back together. We need to fight for that family to stay together. So a very powerful metaphor. And this is not just poetic. I personally did a little study on this during the Brexit negotiations, where I asked 100 people how much money do you think the UK should pay to the EU as part of the final settlement? When I asked a question like that, 11% of people said we shouldn't give them anything. And then I asked another 100 people, and I just threw in the word divorce. I said, as
Mm.
part of the final divorce settlement. And because that simple word, boom, sets off all of these associations and emotions. And straight away, the number of people that said we shouldn't give them anything doubled, went up to 22%. So you see, this is the thing that the metaphor is often the most powerful word in the sentence. But that was just the idea of the EU as a family was just on one side. The other side, those who wanted us to leave the EU, they didn't perceive it as a family. They saw it as a prison. And we were trapped. We were tied up. We were constrained. We were held back. We were shackled. They used this language. So we needed to break free. And again, very powerful imagery. I went, when I was researching metaphors of Brexit, I snuck in with my youngest daughter at the time. I took her to a Brexit party rally and we
Mm.
watched. And it was fascinating. The then leader of the Brexit Party, a guy called Richard Tice, who's a member of parliament at the moment, while he was talking about the European Union, he literally had a stagehand come and erect a mock prison around him while he was talking. He had handcuffs in his hand while he was talking. And then at the end, after talking about how we were locked into the EU, he said, "Is that what we want?" And the audience roared out, "No." And he said, "No, it isn't. We want to be free." And he physically smashed through the bars, at which
Wow.
point there was massive applause. It was the longest applause. I can't remember whether it was 22 seconds or 32 seconds, but it was a lot longer than normal applause is 8 seconds. Very formulaic human beings are, just 8 seconds. And if you do above that, you're showing it's exceptional. And his response was exceptional. And then, yeah, so the EU was the prison, which was the negative bit. And then Boris had all of his food metaphors. So we're going to have our cake and eat it. We've got an oven ready deal. So in the whole of the 2019 general election campaign that we had here in the UK. Literally every day, Boris was on the news, on TV, talking about how he had an oven-ready deal, and he was
Hmm.
pictured with food. Now, neuroscientists have shown that when we see images of food, there's a guy called Charles Spence who's got like a special psychiatry unit. He works with a lot of corporates up at Oxford University. And he's found that when we look at images of food, it activates our reward system. We have a physiological reaction. We start salivating, our mouth, stomach starts preparing enzymes in order to break down the food. So Boris Johnson was literally making people's mouths water for Brexit.
Wow.
Quite
Wow.
extraordinary, but that's, that's the power of metaphor. And we get it all the time, and we never talk about it. Like with AI, the big issue at the moment, it's all about the metaphors.
Hmm.
Do you see AI as the Terminator, or do you see it as your best friend forever? Now, the smart companies are branding it like your best friend forever. You notice the way people talk about Claude, Claude, Claude.
Hmm.
Everyone loves Claude. In a way, they don't speak with the same affection about ChatGPT.
ChatGPT. Yeah.
ChatGPT is like, I mean, that's classic bad corporate comms, isn't it? It's an acronym. Most people don't even know
Yeah, I
what
was just gonna
GPT
say, it just
stands
comes out of
for.
the name also. It's so obvious.
Yeah. Whereas Claude, like with Alexa, we can visualize we've got a relationship with someone here, and with Claude, you're like, well, this is great. This is your dream collaborator, someone who's always there for you. They never get tired, never get angry, never ask you for a pay rise, always full of energy, always full of ideas, always full of enthusiasm, never going to let you down, and straight away you get this little movie reel
Hmm.
running in your mind about what Claude is. I noticed it today. I've been in Oxford today with a load of founders, helping them write their speeches, and some people were talking about Claude. And when they talk about Claude, they speak about Claude as if they're a real person. You know, Power of metaphor, man.
Wow, that's amazing. And actually, given you briefly talked about AI also, do you have an opinion, Simon, on so for example, in this tech AI space, right? You have leaders like Satya Nadella, and then you also have Sam Altman, and then you have other leaders as well.
Mm.
Do you have a take on any contrast in how some of these corporate leaders speak versus some of the political leaders? Do they ultimately they might be using different mechanisms to achieve the same end goal because they're trying to appeal to a cohort or they appeal to the creation of some sort of cult that they want people to buy into? What levers do you find that they pull are similar or different?
It's all the same. It's all ethos, pathos, logos, whether you're looking at business or politics. But obviously, the ethos of a politician will be acquired from different things to the ethos of a business person. And likewise, the pathos, the emotions of audience watching a political speech will be rather different to people who are at, say, a product launch. I think the more interesting comparison is not between business people and politicians, although that is fruitful territory. But like with someone, what I think is more interesting is the difference, the contrast between someone like Sam Altman and someone like Steve Jobs.
Hmm.
You know, with Steve Jobs being brilliant on all of those things, like moral appeals for, like Steve Jobs. You've probably seen his Stanford commencement speech, have you? I knew you would have done. Yeah,
Yeah.
you know your stuff. And that was all about curiosity, wasn't it? Curiosity and intuition. So
Hmm.
he knows the importance of that kind of moral framing. We're here to do good. Whereas Sam Altman, I mean, a lot of the time he's, talks about AI potentially causing the end of humanity. And it's kind
Yes.
of like, well, hang on, why are you doing it then? It's the opposite of morality. And likewise, whereas Steve Jobs would know how to land a metaphor, and he often personified his products. Like you think about the Mac, when he launched the Mac, he was like, today you're going to hear from Mac in person, and then
Hmm.
Mac spoke, and, you had the facial design into the product and all of this stuff, compared with Sam Altman, who did not launch ChatGPT as a person. So that's where I think it's most interesting. Sam Altman, to be fair, I think he obviously realizes he missed a trick because as soon as he launched ChatGPT, yes, there was huge uptake, but there was also a massive backlash. I mean, with regulators in the EU and nations around the world like looking to get it banned. Italy did ban it, and that, we're still talking about how to regulate it
Yeah.
now in a way that we never had with the iPhone. Now people are looking to regulate about social media use and about iPhones retrospectively, about 20 years too late. When Steve Jobs launched it, no one was saying this needs to be banned. It needs to be for over 16s, and that's because he was clever about the way he launched it. Whereas the way
Yeah.
that Sam Altman launched OpenAI, everyone was like, "Ugh, it's like the Manhattan Project. It's
Yeah.
going to lead to the end of the world." But I think Sam Altman and OpenAI are now sorting it out. And the one that I'm watching with interest is this new collaboration, relatively new collaboration between OpenAI and IO. Is it Johnny Ives's company?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's fascinating
What that
because
leads to.
Johnny Ives knows the language. So, and he knows about moral framing, about appropriate use of metaphor. So I don't know whether you watched the famous coffee when they're having Altman and Ives are having a coffee
I haven't seen
together
that
in
now.
San. Oh, it's a brilliant video. It's a case study of good comms. Came out maybe last summer. And it shows two of them having a coffee together in Seattle. And you see how Johnny Ives is changing the language. And he talks about, the metaphor saying we're going to launch a family of products and, all of this, and making it very clear that this is about doing good in the world, that moral framing.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they actually come out with something that I don't know is some sort of iPhone version of today versus when it was launched, like whatever 20 years ago. That
Yeah.
said, you know that Johnny Ive also was part of designing the Ferrari Luce, the EV that the Ferrari has launched, and the irony of that is this idea of when you think of a Ferrari, it's like this hot-blooded bull, right? I mean, no, the bull, of course, is Lamborghini, but is a racing, prancing horse. So Ferrari is
Yeah.
all about passion and excitement and all of that. And the
Yeah.
Luce looks like this is one perspective. A lot of people are saying that essentially is the Apple Titan project, which they were gonna do an electric car, an EV, which they tanked, and Johnny Ive has come out with that. So while that might not have panned out the same way, he's still a hit maker with everything that he's done with Apple, and I think he's definitely going to do some really interesting stuff
Yeah.
at OpenAI as well.
That's fascinating though, because you're talking about the bull and stuff like that. And of course, that's another example of the use of metaphor. I mean, in
Yes,
branding as well. And
yes,
isn't it interesting that so many of the cars are depicted as animals,
yes.
not just in terms of their logos,
In the
but
physical design as well.
in the physical design and even in the sonic design, as I
Yes,
discovered.
yeah,
So they will deliberately, they'll I mean, I don't know, there's scientists will explain this much better than me, but the way they design the car, they'll do so in order to make the roar,
yes, yeah,
of
yeah,
the
yeah,
make the engine roar. And so you see, like a lion would roar. And if you have a car that you feel it makes you feel really powerful, you say, "Oh, it's a beast," you know.
yeah.
So and isn't that interesting though that you think about the one of the deepest human instincts is to have power over animals. I mean, it was by taking power over animals that human beings were able to get the control over the planet that they have whenever it was, like 30,000 years ago or whenever. And we've often ridden animals. And so maybe this is actually speaking to people's deepest instincts in terms of a car. It's like, wow, you're taking charge over something really, really powerful here. But I didn't know that about Ives and Ferrari. Very
Ferrari
interesting.
and what they've done. I also just you never know how quickly the time flies by. We're actually down to the last 10, 11 minutes.
Crazy. It's because we spent so much time swearing, or I spent so much time swearing. My apologies for that.
and having fun while doing it as well.
Yeah.
But I do, for I think Neha's here in the audience. There are a couple other people. If you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. There was one question that Neha had actually shared earlier. I don't know, Neha, if you wanna, I'll just call out the question. If you'd like to unmute yourself and talk about that, please feel free. But Neha is essentially a senior design leader, has had a long storied career, and I think now she's also thinking about, communication at the next stage, right? Because there are so many leaders who are dealing with like this freight train of AI, right? It left. It didn't. Sure, we had the LLM, generative AI moment, 3 4 years ago, but AI has been around for a very long time. But I think the rate at which everything has changed in the last 4 years has caught so many people off guard. So you need to have an opinion, or you need to be able to at least be able to frame it in a way that you can put it out there. And Neha had actually asked about, how is it that you continue to be relevant and speak from a place of relevance about your legacy, things that you've achieved, and also trying to marry it with this new age mindset of trying to continue to be relevant in this time. So do you have any advice for that? How do leaders think of relevant communication of things that they've achieved versus things that they're looking to do? No, no worries, Neha. So, but I think I've got the question there. So, Simon, if you have any thoughts there.
I'm not quite sure I followed the question actually. Can you just rephrase it, Khan?
Yes, maybe I'll just.
It's about how to set out your legacy in an age of AI. What do you
Yes.
mean precisely?
In essence, I think along those lines, she was asked, because my question was, what is one communication challenge you're struggling with? And her one line was to be relevant to both legacy and also new age mindset. Um, is that a little
Right.
clear? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, um, I think I mean, I see this as kind of like opportunity for great communicators to really cut through now because
Mm.
there is so much damn AI slop
Yes.
around,
Yeah.
and you see it all the time on LinkedIn now.
Yes.
I used to really enjoy LinkedIn, and now I'm less so, because so many
You're
people
not the only one.
are, so many people are just getting ChatGPT, and we don't call it out. We all know it. It's so clear when it's ChatGPT written, the
Yes.
little,
The
that you can
dashes and
see it.
the,
You
yeah,
don't
you
even
can
need
see
to
it.
read it. Not just the
Yeah.
dashes. It's like that shape, you know.
Yes. Yeah.
Um, and we don't call it out, but we all know it. Just it is in the same way. We now have people on Instagram. I have, friends on Instagram who are unrecognizable on their pictures. You know what I
Mm.
mean? They've put themselves through so many filters, and then you see them
Filters.
in real life, and you're like, whoa, don't mean to be rude. And likewise on Facebook, like people live in like kind of almost fake versions of their lives. Now, for me, this is where authenticity becomes really, really important because when you're speaking spontaneously, authentically from the heart, people can just feel it, and
Mm.
you radiate that authenticity in so many ways. So for me now, the real communicators that are going to cut through are the ones that can communicate effectively and authentically, spontaneously, when they've not been fed something by AI. Because I hate it at conferences now. The amount of conferences that I've been to where it's just one person reading an AI speech out after another, and it's like, be real. Give me something real. People need it. We're craving
Mm.
connection with one another. This one, I love that the connection, you made the connection with me via
Yeah.
Simone Heng, because
Yes.
I adore Simone. I mean, she's fantastic. Her book is incredible. Anyone who doesn't follow her, follow her. Simone Heng. And of course, she writes about this a lot, about how we are craving that deep connection with people. And so when people do open up, they do show a little bit of vulnerability. They are happy to say, "This is who I am. This is what I'm going through." We're instantly like, "Oh wow, you're real," against the 99 fake AI generated things that I've just read.
Yeah.
So, I see AI as massive opportunity for people working in communication. I love it. There are great things about using ChatGPT but don't get it to write. Use it as a researcher, use it as a collaborator, use it as an editor, but for God's sake, don't ask it to write anything because it'll just come up with the same generic crap that, we're seeing so much. And this is the thing, like the process that I went through with you, where I was asking you like those 3 questions. Where does your, love or curiosity come? Why does the world need it? You gave answers that I could never have anticipated, you know?
Yes.
I could never have anticipated. And so they intrigued me and it interested me. Whereas ChatGPT, by definition, it's not going to come up with unique. It's got to give you something that it's read before.
100%. And and I get this question a lot because in the work that I do with various leaders, it's obvious they're saying, okay, we use ChatGPT, we use Claude, etc. Is there a way that I can use it in a, for some of my personal branding work? I say, sure, there is. Just don't give it a prompt, give it a question and ask it to draft the entire thing. Instead, maybe just have a conversation with it. Let's say if you have an idea for something,
Mm.
do a voice note, free flowing thought for maybe 5 7 minutes,
Yeah.
transcribe that, and then give it a little bit of structure. At least 70 80
Mm.
percent of that is you versus
Mm.
70% being ChatGPT. And if you put that kind of content out for 3 months before they know it, say, listen, I don't know if Simon actually talks like this or Karan actually talks like this doesn't sound like them at all.
Yeah, we have got to be careful as well, though, that we do not lose that capacity to think. You know what
Yes.
I mean?
Yes.
Because we know what the tech company model is. Give you something, give you a brilliant product, and it's cheap as chips or it's free, and then they get you addicted to it, and then they start charging you for it. And that's obviously where we'll go with all of these AI models. And once you've lost that capacity to think, it's never coming back. I see something now when I'm doing workshops with people that I never saw in the past, but in the last year or so, when I've given people little writing challenges, people literally have been like, I haven't written anything from scratch in
In
two
so
years.
long.
I've forgotten how to do it. And it's like, holy cow. And you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of, George Orwell's 1984. You
Hmm.
know, everyone knows the story, but one of the things, the two of the most striking scenes in that, chapter one and chapter two. In chapter one, you have Winston Smith sit there with a blank sheet of paper and a pen, and he's forgotten how to write. He's looking at, and he's forgotten. And this is where people are literally now. And then you have chapter two when he goes and speaks to the woman next door, his neighbor, and she can't finish any sentence. Her brain wanders off because that's where we've got to. And it's like, yeah, I mean, obviously everyone always says that 1984 is so prescient, so bang on the money. But I think actually it's more relevant than ever now
Yeah.
with AI because you can see that people's brains we're outsourcing too much. We lost our ability to remember phone numbers. We lost our ability to remember maps and routes because of previous technologies. And boy, be careful about how you use AI.
And
Claude may not be your friend. Claude may be a thief out there to steal your minds.
exactly. And this is the first time even from an education perspective, right, Simon? This is the first time in history, going back many
Mm.
generations, that this generation of kids is actually less cognitively sort of developed and intelligent compared to the previous generation. Before this, every prior generation was considered to be more intelligent, scoring better on other things, right, from an early age perspective. And a lot of that just has to do with where technology is today.
Yeah, totally. I have two daughters, two gorgeous girls, like age 17 and 14, and they do now use AI all the time. But I
Mm.
get them to use it responsibly. And so when they're like, my eldest daughter has been doing her mock A levels like in the last week, and she uses it responsibly. She gets the AI to ask her exam questions and then mark her exam questions, which is actually brilliant that you can do that because you then have as you can have unlimited mocks in preparation for the real mock. But yeah, you've got to be careful, man.
Yeah. Ladies and gents, I think we're down to the last 2 minutes. I actually had a bunch of other questions, but I would highly encourage you to pick up Simon's book, one of four books that he has written so far. That's the first one on speechwriting. That's, I think, the next one.
Yeah.
Uh, in that order, I have got that one, and I think, was that the most recent one, or Connect was the most recent?
No, connects to most. This was a book I wrote about metaphors, dehumanizing metaphors. This was my response to Donald Trump's first election victory. So I
Oh
wrote that
wow,
in about 2017. Bloody good
amazing!
book.
And
Bloody good book.
I believe Simon's now in the midst of writing his next book. And do you have a sense of when that might be out, Simon, or is it too early?
How long is a piece of string? We shall see. We shall see. I'm working on it at the moment. So I'm writing a book about swearing at the moment. I won't say the
Oh,
title. Yeah,
really?
yeah, I
Wow.
am.
And
Yeah.
the irony that that's where we started with first at the
It was. We've
top of
come
this
full
conversation.
circle.
We've
There we
come a
go.
full circle around that. So, with that, thank you so much for this, Simon. I really enjoyed this conversation. Uh,
Likewise.
Thank you for taking the time. Ladies and gents, we covered so many different things in today's conversation. My personal takeaway is just a simple framing, right? If you're looking to communicate a certain way, think of my story, your story, and what next. Like a simple framing that you can maybe test in something that you're communicating. You're maybe dealing with a different difficult conversation or a speech that you're looking to do. It could even be a speech that you need to, your conversation you need to have with your, young daughter or at the PTA. Who knows? But I think there's a lot of it's important to practice a lot of this stuff, right, Simon? And if you want to get some more tips of it, check out Simon's TEDx talks. The three of them that he's done cumulatively got over 5 million views. And definitely pick up one of his books because there are many to learn from. Thank you again, Simon, for making the time.
Thank you, Khan. Yeah, so yeah, my story, our story, what next? And anyone who's been listening to this, please do connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm on TikTok, the Speechwriter at one, and Instagram. You'll find me all over the place. But I've really enjoyed it. Thank you for your time, Khan, and thank you for your brilliant questions.
Thank you for making the time. Thank you, everyone. We do these conversations once or twice a month. Tune in for the next one. Follow Simon and me on LinkedIn and see you in the next one. Okay, where is that?